opened my eyes on a smooth white floor. My first thought was that hospitals had gotten much brighter. My second was that hospitals usually had walls. I pushed myself upright. An endless white chamber stretched around me, broken only by a black desk and a man sitting behind it with his face buried in both hands. I checked my arms. Nothing hurt. I checked my legs. Everything was still attached. The man slowly lowered his hands. His expression made me more nervous than the empty room. He looked like someone waiting for a customer to notice the damage. I got to my feet. Where am I? The man stood too quickly and knocked several glowing papers off his desk. They vanished before hitting the floor. That is slightly complicated. I walked toward him. Then start with the simple part. He straightened his robe. You are dead. I stopped beside the empty chair. That was simple. The memory returned a second later. I had been walking home. Something cracked above me. People screamed. I looked up. Then nothing. I rubbed the top of my head. Was it a truck? The man shook his head. No truck. I relaxed a little. Good. He immediately ruined that feeling. A dimensional observation platform detached from its mounting point and struck you. I stared at him. A what? He made a small square with his hands as if that helped. Observation platform. I looked up at the endless white ceiling. So heaven fell on me. His mouth tightened. That description is unnecessarily dramatic. Did something belonging to you fall out of the sky and kill me? He looked toward the side of the room. Technically. I pulled out the chair and sat down. Then heaven fell on me. He sat across from me and summoned a glowing document over the desk. I watched several red symbols flash across it. His expression became worse with every line. Apparently that was not good news for him. I leaned closer. Was I supposed to die? He moved the document away from me. No. How long did I have left? His eyes shifted down the page. 58 years, 4 months, and 11 days. I sat back. The man carefully folded his hands. I pointed at him. You owe me 58 years. He winced. That is why you are here. A second glowing window appeared above the desk. Pictures of swords, staffs, crowns, wings, dragons, and other ridiculous things began scrolling across it. The man gestured toward them with the confidence of a salesman who had finally reached the good part of his presentation. Divine interference qualifies you for reincarnation compensation. I looked at the floating weapons. That sounds suspiciously specific. His hand dropped. Accidents happen. Yours apparently do. He ignored that. You will be transferred to another inhabited world in a healthy body. You will understand the local spoken and written languages. You will also receive one divine gift. I leaned toward the glowing window. Now you have my attention? He brightened again and enlarged the first option. A golden sword rotated in the air. Sword Saint, complete instinctive mastery of bladed weapons. I pictured myself being handed a sword and immediately told to fight something with horns. I swiped the option away. No, a staff replaced it. Archmage. Extraordinary magical talent and mastery of the common elemental schools. I swiped again. No. His eyebrow rose. A shining suit of armor appeared next. Heroic body. Enhanced strength, speed, recovery, disease resistance, and lifespan. I pushed the window aside. Absolutely not. The man stared at me. That is one of the most requested gifts. Exactly. If everyone wants it, somebody is probably going to recognize it. He looked confused. Why would that matter? I pointed at the sword still floating nearby, because I know how this works. I arrive in another world with legendary combat ability. A princess finds me. Then a king gives me a sword and explains that the demon emperor has returned after 1,000 years. The man glanced at one of his documents. I followed his eyes. Is there a demon emperor? He quickly closed the document. Irrelevant. I stood and walked around the desk. That means yes. He blocked the papers with his body. There are several ongoing geopolitical concerns. That is divine language for yes. I returned to my chair. I am not becoming the hero. The man sighed and dismissed the weapons. Then what do you want? I leaned back and thought about the 58 years I had just lost. My first life had been normal. I worked too much. I paid too much rent. I waited for weekends that vanished in 2 hours. If I was getting another life, I wanted the part people normally waited until retirement to enjoy. I held up one finger. Money. The administrator frowned. I raised another. Safety. His frown deepened. I raised a third. As little mandatory employment as possible. He stared at my hand. Your great ambition in a magical world is unemployment? Comfortable unemployment. I lowered my hand. There is a difference. He sat back down. I can grant wealth. I shook my head. Wealth gets stolen. I can grant a noble title. Worse. Land, taxes, a merchant blessing? Now we are getting closer. He summoned another list. Skills related to appraisal, negotiation, crafting, enchanting, alchemy, and commerce filled the air. My eyes stopped on one word. Potion maker. I pointed at it. That. Relief crossed his face. Finally. Advanced alchemical knowledge is a perfectly reasonable choice. You would still need ingredients and equipment, but with proper practice. I raised my hand. Stop. His relief vanished. I do not want to make potions. He looked at the option I had just selected. You literally pointed at potion maker. I want to create potions. Those are the same thing. They are absolutely not the same thing. I stood and mimed stirring an invisible pot. Making potions means finding herbs, buying equipment, measuring ingredients, waiting for things to boil, failing 3 times, cleaning the mess, and eventually producing 1 bottle. I opened my empty palm. Creating potions means I think about the potion and the bottle appears. The administrator stared at my hand. I smiled. Much less work? He slowly rubbed his forehead. That is not an approved standard gift. Neither was being crushed by divine construction equipment. Observation equipment. I pointed at him. Do not make it sound better. He looked down at the glowing accident report. I could almost see him calculating how much trouble I could cause for him. I let him calculate. Eventually, he lifted one hand. Fine. Magical potion creation. You define an effect. Your ability creates a compatible, consumable liquid. I nodded. Unlimited quantities. His hand froze. No. I pointed at the accident report. 58 years. Alex, 6 loose bolts. 4. I stared at him. He stared back. I smiled. So 2 bolts were actually missing? He closed his eyes. Unlimited quantities is excessive. Then give me 58 years of stored potion charges. He opened one eye. That would be worse. Unlimited it is. I sat down before he changed his mind. The administrator dragged both hands across the glowing interface. New lines appeared beneath the ability. Potion creation. Instant manifestation. No material requirement, no daily limit. I read each one carefully. Unlimited range of effects? He immediately added a restriction. Effect must be compatible with a liquid consumable or topical treatment. That sounds vague. It needs to be vague because I can already tell you are going to search for loopholes. I pointed at the first line. Healing potion. Allowed. Antidote. Allowed. Strength potion. Temporary enhancement allowed. Speed potion. Temporary enhancement allowed. Night vision. Allowed. Fire resistance. Allowed. Cold resistance. Allowed. A potion that lets me breathe underwater. He hesitated, then nodded. Temporary physiological adaptation. Allowed. I leaned closer. A potion that restores a missing hand. The administrator stopped typing. I waited. He looked annoyed that I had found something interesting so quickly. If the person is alive and the effect restores biological tissue, then yes. I sat forward. And I? Yes. Damaged organs? Within the same rule. Spinal injuries? He pointed at me. You are becoming too enthusiastic. I ignored that. Disease depends on the disease. Aging? His finger hit the interface before I finished speaking. No immortality. I laughed. I said aging. You were going there? Maybe eventually. He added another restriction. Potions cannot grant true immortality or resurrect the dead. I read it twice. What counts as dead? The administrator slowly looked at me. I raised both hands. Important medical question. If the heart stops for 5 seconds, are they dead? Clinically, perhaps. Spiritually, no. What if the soul has not left yet? He narrowed his eyes. Alex, can a potion restart the heart? He thought about it. Yes. Can a potion repair the heart first? Yes. Then death sounds surprisingly negotiable. He added 3 more glowing restrictions at once. I laughed harder. He pointed toward the new rules. Once a soul has permanently separated from the body, you cannot restore it. Fine. I tapped another line. What about magic? He frowned. What about it? Potion that restores magical energy. Allowed. Potion that increases magical power. Temporarily. Potion that gives someone magic if they have none. He paused. The glowing interface flickered. That got both of our attention. The administrator grabbed the window and scrolled through several pages. I watched his confidence disappear. Finally, he looked back at me. Potentially. I smiled. He pointed at me again. Temporarily. Still counts. Potion that grants a spell? Temporarily, if the world's magical laws permit it. Potion that increases luck? No. Why? Causality manipulation. Potion that makes me more attractive? He stared at me. I shrugged. I am testing the boundaries. Cosmetic alteration is allowed within biological limits. Good to know. Potion that lets me grow wings. Temporary transformation effects are possible. I leaned back. This was getting ridiculous. The administrator seemed to realize the same thing. He grabbed the glowing ability and began adding rules faster. No permanent divine abilities, no direct control over another person's free will, no rewriting reality, no creating matter except the potion and its container, no effects extending beyond the person or object treated unless naturally produced by the effect. I raised a finger. Object treated? He stopped. I pointed at the wording. You said person or object. His eyes widened. He changed it to living target. Too late. I saw it. You saw nothing. Potion that repairs a sword? No. Potion that repairs damaged wood? No. Potion that removes rust? That is technically a chemical treatment, so yes. He clenched his jaw. Potion that strengthens leather? Topical treatment? Probably. Potion that cleans clothes? Allowed. I grinned. Potion that waterproofs boots? Allowed. Potion that makes food taste better? Allowed. He looked exhausted. I had not even been there an hour. I tapped the final blank section. Containers? What about them? Does the potion appear in my hand in a bottle? Yes. What kind? Whatever simple container is required for safe use. I imagined a tiny healing bottle shaped like a dragon. No. I looked at him. You read my mind? Only when you make that face. Fine. Standard bottles. He altered the ability again. By default, created potions would appear in a small, clear glass bottle with a secure silver stopper. Different effects could produce different liquid colors. I nodded. That was actually useful. Easy to recognize, easy to carry, easy to sell. I looked around the empty white chamber. Can I test it here? The administrator immediately looked suspicious. Why? Because I would rather discover a problem before you drop me into a forest full of monsters. He considered that. One test. I held out my hand. The ability felt strangely natural. There was no spell, no menu. I simply pictured what I wanted. A basic healing potion. Something capable of closing small cuts, reducing bruising, and restoring minor tissue damage. A soft flash filled my palm. A clear glass bottle appeared against my skin. Bright red liquid glowed inside it. I forgot about the administrator for a moment. The bottle was real. I turned it between my fingers. The silver stopper reflected the white room. The administrator leaned across the desk. That is functioning correctly. I pulled the stopper free. A faint, sweet smell escaped. I looked at my perfectly healthy hand. I need an injury. The administrator snapped his fingers. A tiny paper cut appeared across my index finger. I stared at it. You could have warned me. You wanted an injury. I tipped one drop of red potion onto the cut. Warm light moved across my skin. The cut vanished. I wiped away the remaining liquid. Not bad. The administrator reached for the bottle. I moved it away. What happens to unused potion? It remains until consumed, destroyed, or dismissed by you. Dismissed? I focused on the bottle. It vanished. I smiled. That is useful. The administrator's expression suggested he regretted teaching me that. I held out my hand again. You said one test. This is still the same test. It is absolutely not. A blue potion appeared in my palm. He leaned around the desk. What did you make? Hydration. I drank it. The liquid tasted like cold citrus water. A cool sensation spread through my body. I suddenly felt as if I had just finished drinking after a long hike. I looked at the empty bottle. That solves drinking water. The administrator opened his mouth. A pale yellow potion appeared in my other hand. Nutrition. I drank that too. Warmth settled into my stomach. Hunger disappeared. I looked between my hands. That solves food emergencies. Alex? I summoned a green bottle. Fatigue removal. Alex. I drank it. Energy flooded through me. I felt completely rested. I pointed at the administrator. This ability is incredible. He reached across the desk and grabbed my wrist before another bottle could appear. Enough testing. I looked at his hand. He released me. I have one more question. He visibly braced himself. Can I sell these? That is not a divine mechanics question. So yes, you may do whatever local law permits. I smiled. He immediately pointed at me. Do not destroy an economy. I had not considered that until he said it. His eyes narrowed. Forget I said that. Too late. The administrator dismissed every glowing window except one. A map appeared in the air. A continent floated across it with several kingdoms marked in different colors. He enlarged the western region. You will arrive in the kingdom of Varel. Stable government, low monster activity near major settlements, moderate magical development. I studied the map. Is it currently at war? No. Demon invasion? No. Plague? No. Prophecy involving a person from another world? He checked something before answering. Not that I'm aware of. I pointed at him. You checked. Responsible administration. Suspicious administration. He ignored me and enlarged a town near a river. Bellhaven, regional trade town. Population around 12,000. Adventurers, merchants, craftsmen, several temples, and a modest alchemy industry. That sounds perfect. He seemed surprised. Really? Large enough to sell things. Small enough that the king probably does not visit. The administrator looked away. I noticed. Does the king visit? Not often. That answer was acceptable. He closed the map. Anything else before transfer? I looked at the glowing potion creation ability one last time. I wanted a quiet life, a small shop, enough money to eat well, maybe a house somewhere outside town. This ridiculous ability should make all of that easy. I stood. One thing. The administrator tensed. What now? I pointed toward my clothes. Am I arriving like this? He glanced at me. Your new body will receive ordinary local clothing and a small amount of starting currency. How small? Enough for several days of food and lodging. Better than nothing. I stepped away from the desk. The administrator lifted both hands. A circle of white light opened beneath my feet. Wind moved through the empty chamber for the first time. He looked relieved to finally be getting rid of me. I gave him a small wave. Try tightening the bolts next time. His face fell. The light swallowed me. The white chamber vanished. Cold air hit my face. My feet touched grass. I immediately fell forward. I caught myself with both hands before eating dirt. Birds scattered from a nearby tree. I pushed myself onto my knees. Apparently, divine reincarnation did not include graceful landings. A wide green field stretched around me. A dirt road crossed the hill ahead. Beyond it, stone walls surrounded a town beside a sparkling river. Smoke rose from chimneys. Wagons moved through a gate beneath two square towers. I checked myself again. New clothes, small travel bag, belt pouch, healthy body. No obvious divine paperwork. I opened the pouch, 12 silver coins and a handful of copper. I had no idea whether that was generous or insulting. I stood and brushed grass from my knees. Bellhaven looked close enough to reach before sunset. I took one step toward the road, then stopped. I had an unlimited potion ability. Walking normally suddenly felt inefficient. I held out my hand. A green bottle appeared. I considered the effect carefully. Mild stamina enhancement. Nothing dramatic. I drank half. Energy moved through my legs. I started walking. After 10 steps, walking felt too slow. I finished the bottle. My pace doubled without effort. I laughed and headed downhill. The road reached a wooden bridge a few minutes later. A wagon creaked toward me from the opposite direction. An older merchant guided the horse while a younger man sat beside him. Both looked tired. The merchant noticed me moving unusually fast and pulled the reins. I slowed before reaching them. His eyes followed my legs. "Long road behind you?" I looked back at the hill. "Not particularly." The younger man leaned around him. "Then why are you walking like someone lit your boots on fire?" I looked down at myself. The stamina potion apparently had more effect than expected. I forced myself to stand normally. "Exercise." The merchant looked unconvinced. I changed the subject. "Bellhaven that way?" He pointed beyond me. "Straight through the south gate. You can see it from here." I thanked him and moved aside. The wagon started forward. One wheel immediately hit a deep rut. Wood cracked. The wagon tilted. A wooden crate slid toward the edge. The younger man grabbed for it. He missed. I moved without thinking. The stamina potion pushed my body faster than expected. I caught the crate before it hit the road. The weight nearly pulled my shoulder out. I dropped it more carefully than gracefully. The younger man stared at me. The merchant stared at the crate. I rubbed my arm. Definitely not a strength potion. The merchant climbed down. "You all right?" "Fine. Mostly." He inspected the damaged wheel. A long crack ran through one spoke. His shoulders dropped. I looked at the road toward Bellhaven. Maybe 20 minutes away, the wagon was loaded with crates. I considered testing another loophole, then remembered the administrator specifically blocking repair potions. I crouched beside the wheel anyway. Potion that strengthens wood was allowed. A brown liquid appeared in my hand. The merchant noticed the bottle. "What is that?" "Wood treatment." That sounded normal enough. I poured a thin line across the cracked spoke. The liquid soaked into the wood. A faint glow moved through the grain. The crack did not close, but the spoke hardened and stopped flexing. I pressed against it. Solid. The merchant crouched beside me. He tapped the treated wood. "What kind of alchemist carries wagon reinforcement solution?" I stood. Prepared ones. The younger man picked up the bottle. The remaining liquid vanished from his fingers the moment I dismissed it. His mouth fell open. I pretended not to notice. The merchant slowly stood. "Are you heading into Bellhaven to sell medicine?" "Maybe." His expression brightened. "Then speak with the Alchemists Guild before you set your prices." "Why?" "Because they will rob you legally if you do not know what things are worth." Useful advice. I thanked him again and continued toward town at a much more normal pace. The stamina potion wore off near the south gate. I almost missed the extra energy when it faded. 2 guards checked wagons beneath the stone arch. A line of travelers waited beside a wooden inspection booth. I joined them. A farmer ahead of me paid 2 copper coins and entered. A woman with 3 baskets paid the same. When my turn came, one guard held out his hand. "Entry tax, 2 copper." I paid. His eyes moved to my travel bag. "Trade goods?" "Not yet." He gave me a bored look. "Occupation?" I considered hero from another world and decided against it. "Apothecary." His expression did not change. "Guild registration office is in Market Square." I nodded and stepped through the gate. Bellhaven was louder than I expected. Wagons rolled over stone streets. Shopkeepers called from open stalls. Adventurers in armor moved between taverns. Colorful signs hung above workshops. A fountain stood in the center of the first square. I stopped beside it and took everything in. This was definitely another world. Nobody stared at my clothes. Nobody screamed about a prophecy. No monsters attacked. For the first time since waking in the White Chamber, my plan seemed possible. Find a cheap room, learn potion prices, sell enough medicine to rent a shop. Then do as little as possible for the next several decades. I headed toward Market Square. The Alchemist Guild was easy to find. A painted sign above the door showed a mortar and 3 green leaves. I stepped inside. Shelves covered one wall. Dried herbs filled glass jars. Several customers waited at a long counter. The smell reminded me of tea mixed with a garden shed. A young clerk looked up from a ledger. Registration? I nodded, hopefully. He pushed a wooden form toward me. Name, specialty, master, and certification. I took the pen. Alex, potion making. No master. No certification. The clerk read what I wrote. Then he looked at me. Independent alchemist? Sure. His eyes narrowed. How long have you studied? I thought about the last hour. Long enough. He pushed the form back. Independent applicants require a practical assessment. Of course they did. I followed him through a curtain into a smaller workroom. A woman stood beside an alchemy table covered in burners, scales, knives, and dried plants. She looked at my empty hands. Where are your tools? I looked at the table. I do not use those. The clerk behind me made a small choking sound. The examiner picked up a bundle of leaves. Then, how do you make potions? This was going to be a problem. I held out my hand. Like this. A red healing potion appeared in my palm. Both of them stopped moving. The examiner slowly set down the leaves. I placed the bottle on the table. She picked it up and turned it toward the light. Where did that come from? My ability. She pulled the stopper free and smelled the liquid. The clerk moved closer. The examiner dipped a thin testing strip into the potion. The strip flashed bright blue. Her expression changed. She tested it again. Same result. The clerk looked between us. Is that bad? The examiner set the strip down. Basic healing solution does not react that strongly. I leaned against the table. Is strong good? She gave me a sharp look. Put your hand here. I placed my hand on the table. She picked up a tiny, sterile blade. I immediately pulled my hand back. Why? Practical assessment. I sighed and returned it. She made a shallow cut across the back of my hand. I poured 1 drop of potion onto it. Golden light passed across my skin. The cut vanished. The clerk leaned so close his nose almost touched my hand. The examiner grabbed my wrist and inspected the healed skin. No scar. I nodded. That is generally the point. She released me and looked at the bottle again. How much can you produce? I remembered the administrator's warning about economies. A reasonable amount. The clerk pointed at my hand. You created it from nothing. That seemed like a bad detail to confirm. I smiled. Trade secret. The examiner continued staring at the potion. Finally, she placed it on the table. This qualifies as high-grade healing medicine. My eyebrows rose. How high grade? She opened a cabinet and removed 3 bottles. The first contained cloudy red liquid. The second was brighter. The third glowed faintly. Standard minor healing potion. 4 silver. Improved healing potion. 12 silver. High-grade healing potion starts around 40. I looked at the little bottle I had created without effort. 40 silver? The examiner nodded. More if it closes deeper wounds as cleanly as that cut. I slowly picked the bottle back up. My entire starting money pouch suddenly looked insulting. The clerk handed me another form. Certification fee is 6 silver. I stared at him. You just told me this bottle is worth 40? Correct. I put the bottle on the counter. Take it out of that. The examiner actually smiled. We do not accept potion barter for registration fees. I dismissed the bottle. It vanished. The clerk jumped. The examiner's smile disappeared. I pulled 6 silver from my pouch. Fine. Highway robbery it is. The clerk took the coins. 20 minutes later, I walked back onto Market Square with a stamped wooden guild token and half my starting money gone. I looked at the token. Becoming professionally unemployed was already expensive. My stomach reminded me that the nutrition potion from the god's realm had worn off. I followed the smell of roasting meat to a food stall. 1 copper bought a hot meat pie. I took 1 bite and immediately decided real food was better than nutrition potions. The stall owner watched me inhale half the pie. New in town? I nodded while chewing. That obvious? You are staring at everything. Fair! I finished the pie and bought another. Across the street, a narrow shop displayed blue bottles in its window. A wooden sign read, Mara's Remedies. I watched customers enter and leave. If I wanted an apothecary, I should probably learn what normal medicine looked like before accidentally selling something that cured old age for 3 copper. I crossed the street. A bell rang when I opened the door. The shop was small but busy. Shelves held salves, dried herbs, bandages, and rows of colored bottles. A woman behind the counter was wrapping a customer's wrist. I waited beside a shelf until she finished. Her eyes moved to my new guild token. Fresh registration? I looked down at it. Is it that obvious? The wood is still clean. She returned a roll of bandage to the shelf. Looking for supplies? Prices? She raised an eyebrow. My confidence disappeared. And maybe work. That got her attention. She pointed toward the back room. Show me what you can make. I followed her through another curtain. A scarred wooden table filled the center of the room. I was beginning to understand that every alchemist in this town expected potion makers to spend their lives standing over tables. Mara folded her arms. Minor healing potion. I summoned one. Red liquid, clear glass, silver stopper. Her eyes narrowed. Antidote for common snake venom. I summoned a pale green bottle. Fever reducer, amber bottle. Burn treatment, blue topical potion. She stopped me before I created another. Where are you storing those? I held up my empty hands. Nowhere. Her gaze moved to the bottles lined across the table. And the containers? Part of the ability. She picked up the green antidote. Have you tested this? Not on a snake bite. She gave me a look. Fair criticism. She uncorked it and used a testing crystal from a drawer. The crystal changed from purple to white. Mara became very still. That works. Good. She tested the burn treatment. Then the fever reducer. Each reaction made her quieter. I was starting to recognize that expression. It was the same look the administrator had made when he realized unlimited was a mistake. Mara set the crystal down. What do you want? A room, eventually a shop, comfortable money, and very few responsibilities. She stared at me. I mean today. Right. Work. I pointed toward the bottles. I can make these meh. Mara picked up the healing potion. If these are as strong as they look, selling them carelessly will cause problems. There it was again. What kind of problems? Every licensed alchemist in Bellhaven buys ingredients from 3 merchant houses. Those merchants set prices around limited supply. You appear to have skipped the supply part. I looked at the bottles. So, I should charge normal prices. Mara shook her head. You should avoid telling anyone how cheaply you can make them. That seemed easy enough. I have another problem. She waited. I need somewhere to sleep tonight and registration took half my money. Mara laughed. That was not the reaction I expected. She walked back toward the front room. Congratulations. You are officially an alchemist. They rob all of us first. I followed her. She pointed upstairs. Spare room, 2 silver a night. 1 if you help in the shop. I looked around the shelves. What counts as helping? Filling common orders, cleaning, carrying boxes, and not creating anything terrifying. I held out my hand. That last one sounds subjective. Very. I looked at the stairs. 1 silver and temporary work sounded better than wandering around town until dark. Deal. Mara pointed toward a stack of empty bottles near the counter. Start with 6 minor healing potions. I looked at the bottles, then at her. Do I have to use those? She closed her eyes for a second. Right, you create the bottle too. I summoned 6 red potions, one after another. Soft flashes filled the counter. A customer waiting near the door stared at us. Mara immediately swept the bottles into a wooden crate. Back room. Now! I carried the crate through the curtain. She followed and shut it behind us. Perhaps do not demonstrate impossible magic in front of customers. I put the crate down. That seems like a rule you could have mentioned first. She pointed at the bottles. And stop making them so bright. I looked at the glowing red liquid. Can normal potions not do that? Not unless someone spent a lot of money making them. I focused on one bottle. The glow faded. The liquid remained clear red. Mara leaned closer. You can change them after creation? Apparently. Her shoulders dropped. I think I am going to regret giving you a room. I smiled. The administrator said something similar. Who? Nobody. Mara went back to the counter. I spent the next hour learning the shop. Most customers wanted simple things. Headache tonic, stomach medicine, bandages, cheap salves. Actual magical healing potions were expensive enough that people saved them for serious injuries. That surprised me. My ability had made the word potion feel casual. Here, even a weak healing bottle could represent several days of wages. A laborer entered with swollen hands after working around some irritating plant. Mara mixed a paste for him. I watched from the side. The treatment took several minutes to prepare. I could have solved the problem instantly. I kept my hands in my pockets. Another woman bought cough medicine for her son. Again, I said nothing. Maybe the administrator's economy warning had been useful after all. Near sunset, the shop finally emptied. Mara counted coins behind the counter. I swept the floor. This was more work than I had planned. I leaned on the broom. How long until I qualify for the comfortable part of being an apothecary? Mara did not look up. 30 years! I almost dropped the broom. She smiled. I decided she was joking. Probably. A crash sounded outside. Mara's smile disappeared. Someone shouted in the street. Another voice yelled for a healer. Mara dropped the coins and ran for the door. I followed her into Market Square. A group of adventurers pushed through the evening crowd. Two of them carried a woman between them. Blood covered one side of her armor. Her leg hung at an angle that legs should not hang. A third adventurer stumbled beside them with blood across his face. Move! The crowd opened. Mara grabbed the injured woman's wrist. Her expression changed immediately. Bring her inside. We cleared the front counter. The adventurers lowered their companion onto a treatment table. Mara cut away the damaged leather around her leg. I looked once and wished I had not. Bone had broken through the skin. Dark lines spread upward from another wound near her thigh. Mara touched the discoloration. Poison. The injured woman's breathing became shallow. One adventurer slammed a small bottle onto the table. We gave her 2 antidotes already. Mara examined it. Marsh basil mixture. Wrong venom. The man grabbed his hair. It was a black ridge viper. Mara froze. That reaction told me enough. Is that bad? She opened a cabinet and searched through bottles. Very. The adventurer leaned over his companion. Can you treat it? Mara pulled out a dark green vial. I can slow it. Maybe. She poured the medicine into the woman's mouth. Nothing changed. The black lines continued moving up her leg. Mara grabbed another bottle. The injured woman's body jerked. Her companions held her shoulders. I stood beside the shelves and watched. This was exactly the kind of problem my ability existed to solve. It was also exactly the kind of problem Mara had told me not to solve in front of people. The woman's breathing stopped for a moment. One adventurer shouted her name. I made my decision. Quiet life could wait 5 minutes. I stepped toward the table. What does the venom do? Mara looked over her shoulder. Alex, not now. I moved closer. What does it do? Her eyes returned to the spreading black veins. Paralysis, tissue destruction, then respiratory failure? I held out my hand behind the counter where the adventurers could not see it clearly. A pale green bottle appeared. Not a general antidote. I defined the effect precisely. Neutralize the black ridge viper toxin currently present in the body. Prevent further binding. Break down the active venom into harmless compounds. I handed it to Mara. Use this. She stared at the bottle. What is it? Specific antidote. You have never even seen this venom. I pointed toward the woman. I do not need to. Another spasm hit her body. Mara stopped arguing. She poured the potion between the woman's lips. For 2 seconds, nothing happened. Then the black lines stopped spreading. The adventurer nearest us noticed first. Look! Color began returning to the woman's skin. Mara grabbed her wrist. Her pulse strengthened. The room went silent. I felt relief for exactly 3 seconds. Then Mara looked at the destroyed leg. The poison had stopped, but the injury remained. The exposed bone was shattered in several places. One adventurer lowered his head. "Can you save the leg?" Mara did not answer immediately. That was answer enough. She touched the damaged tissue. "Even with healing magic, this is too severe. We need a surgeon." "How long?" the adventurer asked. Mara looked at the clock near the wall. Too long. The nearest surgical healer was apparently on the other side of town. The woman's pulse was improving, but blood still soaked the table. Mara grabbed bandages. I looked at the leg. Then I thought about the administrator's exact wording. If the target was alive, a potion could restore biological tissue. I raised my hand. Mara saw it. "No." I looked at her. "You do not even know what I'm doing?" "I know that face." I did not realize I had a face. She stepped between me and the table. The antidote was already impossible. "Do not make this worse." The injured woman groaned behind her. One of the adventurers squeezed her hand. I looked at Mara. "Will she lose the leg?" Mara did not answer. I stepped around her. "Then I can make it better." A bottle appeared in my palm. This one looked different. The liquid was bright gold. Even after I reduced the glow, tiny points of light moved through it. Mara stared at the bottle. "What did you create?" "Complete physical restoration." Her face went blank. I clarified before she could object. "Living tissue only. Restore damaged bone, muscle, blood vessels, nerves, and skin to the body's healthy state. Remove dead tissue created by the injury. Replace lost blood volume. No resurrection, no immortality. Very responsible." Mara grabbed my wrist. "Alex, you cannot just make something like that." I looked at the woman on the table. "Apparently I can." The injured adventurer beside us heard that. His eyes moved to the golden bottle. "What is it?" Mara looked at me. I looked at Mara. She looked like she wanted to throw me out the nearest window. The woman on the table screamed as her damaged leg shifted. That ended the debate. I pulled free and handed Mara the potion. "Either we test it or we do not." Mara stared at the gold liquid. Then she looked at her patient. She pulled the stopper free. "Half." I nodded. Half sounded scientific. Mara carefully poured the potion into the woman's mouth. The effect was immediate. Golden light spread beneath her skin. The adventurers stepped back. The broken leg moved. Bone slid beneath torn muscle. One man turned pale. I almost joined him. The exposed fracture pulled inward. Damaged flesh closed around it. Blackened tissue regained color. The woman's breathing deepened. Mara forgot to blink. The twisted leg straightened across the table. The last open wound sealed itself. Silence filled the shop. The injured woman opened her eyes. She looked at the ceiling, then at Mara, then at the 3 adventurers surrounding her. "Why is everyone staring at me?" One of the men started laughing. Another covered his face. The third sat down hard on the floor. Mara placed both hands on the woman's leg and carefully pressed along the healed bone. "Move your foot." The woman did. "Bend your knee." She bent it. Mara stepped back. "Stand up." The adventurers protested at once. Mara ignored them. The woman slowly lowered her feet to the floor. She stood. Nothing happened. She took one step, then another. Her face changed from confusion to disbelief. I looked at the remaining half bottle in Mara's hand. That worked much better than expected. Mara turned toward me so slowly that I considered running. "What did you just give her?" I pointed at the bottle. "Restoration potion." One adventurer grabbed my shoulders. "Where did you get that?" I looked at his hands. He released me. "I made it." His eyes widened. The healed woman stopped walking. Mara closed her eyes. I realized the quiet part of my new life might already be in danger. The first adventurer pointed at the golden liquid. "How many of those do you have?" I glanced at Mara. She was silently begging me to choose my next words carefully. I nodded. "Not many. Technically 0 was a number, and I currently had 0 other bottles. Mara exhaled. The adventurer looked disappointed. Good. Then the healed woman noticed the discarded red bottles behind the counter. Are you the new alchemist? I looked down at my guild token. Unfortunately, she laughed. That was also unfortunate because everyone in the room relaxed. People started asking questions. How strong was the antidote? Could the restoration potion repair old injuries? Could it cure scars? Could it repair damaged eyes? Could it heal someone crushed by a monster? I raised both hands. One at a time. Mara slammed the golden bottle onto the counter. Nobody asks him anything. Everyone went quiet again. She pointed at the adventurers. Your friend is alive. Take her upstairs to rest. She pointed at me next. You are coming with me. I followed her into the back room. She shut the door. Then she locked it. I leaned against the table. That feels dramatic. Mara turned around. Do you understand what you just did? Saved someone? You created a specific antidote to a rare venom after hearing one sentence about it. I nodded. That part went well. You then created a potion that repaired a shattered leg in less than a minute. Also went well. Mara walked toward me. High priests cannot do that reliably. I stopped smiling. That sounded important. She pointed toward the front room. Those adventurers belong to the Silverhawks. Half the guild knows them. By tomorrow morning, everyone will know what happened here. I looked at the closed door. Maybe they will keep it quiet. A cheer exploded from the front room. Someone shouted that Lisa could walk again. Mara and I stared at the door. I sighed. Probably not. Mara rubbed both temples. How many restoration potions can you actually make? I hesitated. She noticed. Alex? I held up one finger. This answer is going to make you angry. Her eyes narrowed. I held out my hand. Another golden bottle appeared. Mara stared at it. I dismissed it. Then I created another. I dismissed that one too. Mara sat down. Unlimited. I nodded. As far as I know. She covered her face. That reaction was becoming familiar. I pulled out the chair across from her. Is this really that serious? Her hands dropped. A high-grade healing potion costs 40 to 60 silver. A royal restoration elixir capable of repairing major organ damage can sell for hundreds of gold, assuming one can even be found. I thought about the bottle I had just created for free. How much is 1 gold? Mara stared at me. That is your question? I shrugged. I arrived today. She stood and opened a small strongbox. 10 copper, make 1 silver. 100 silver, make 1 gold. I did the math. The result made my stomach hurt. How much would that leg potion be worth? Mara looked toward the front room. If its effect can be repeated, I do not know. Hundreds of gold, thousands to the right buyer. Nobles would cross kingdoms for it. I sank lower in the chair. That sounded less like comfortable money and more like kidnapping money. Mara pointed at me finally. You understand. I looked at my hands. I can make weaker ones. Yes, that is what you should have done. She paced across the room. Minor healing, fever reduction, common antidotes, useful things, normal things. I nodded. We can do normal. A knock hit the back door. Both of us froze. Another knock followed. Mara unlocked it. The guild clerk from earlier stood outside, breathing hard. He looked at me. There you are. Mara blocked the doorway. Why? The clerk held up a piece of paper. We received a report that an unregistered restoration class elixir was used in the shop. Mara looked over her shoulder at me. That was fast. I gave her a small wave. The clerk pushed past her. Is it true? I stood. Define restoration class. His eyes widened. That is a yes. He unfolded the paper. The guild examiner is on her way. So is Master Pell. Mara groaned. Who is Master Pell? The clerk looked offended. Head of the Bellhaven Alchemists Guild. Of course he was. I rubbed my forehead. My first day in another world had gone very badly. The clerk noticed the golden stains on the treatment cloth. He moved closer. Is that residue? Mara grabbed the cloth first and shoved it into a bucket. No! The clerk stared at the bucket. Mara stared back. I decided not to interfere. The front door opened again. Heavy footsteps crossed the shop. Mara closed her eyes. Too late! An older man entered the back room with the examiner from earlier behind him. Master Pell looked at me, then at Mara, then at the locked cabinet. I assumed he had already heard everything. He held out his hand. Alex? I slowly shook it. Master Pell. He released me and placed a small silver badge on the table. I am told you created an antidote for Black Ridge viper venom without possessing a sample. I nodded. He placed a second object beside the badge, a broken piece of bone wrapped in cloth. I am also told you restored a compound fracture severe enough to require amputation. I looked at Mara. She folded her arms. No help there. I turned back to Pell. Yes. The examiner stepped forward. What formula did you use? I tapped my temple. Custom. She frowned. Ingredients? None. Master Pell's face changed slightly. Mara groaned again. The examiner looked at my empty hands. Show us. I held up my palms. Show you what? Create one. I looked at Mara. She shook her head once. Finally, a clear instruction. I lowered my hands. No. The examiner seemed surprised. Master Pell seemed more interested. Why not? Because 5 minutes ago I learned one bottle may be worth enough money to make refusing a very healthy survival instinct. Pell glanced at Mara. She nodded. His expression softened. Sensible. That was not the response I expected. He pulled out the chair. Sit. I sat. Pell sat across from me. The examiner remained standing. The clerk hovered near the door. Mara leaned against a shelf. My quiet evening had turned into a meeting. Pell folded his hands. I do not care where your ability came from. Good. I do care whether you intend to flood Bellhaven with medicine that makes every other alchemist obsolete. I thought about the administrator's warning. Apparently he had seen this coming. I shook my head. I want a small shop. Pell waited for more. That is genuinely the entire plan. Mara laughed from the shelf. Pell looked at her. He also wants comfortable money and very little work. Pell looked back at me. An ambitious man, I pointed at him. Finally, someone understands. The examiner did not look amused. Pell tapped the table. Then we may be able to help each other. I immediately became suspicious. How? You sell ordinary medicine through legal channels. We help establish prices and prevent merchants from discovering that your production costs appear to be non-existent. I looked at him. Mara raised an eyebrow. Pell continued. In exchange, you do not casually produce strategic class medicine in Market Square whenever someone skins a knee. I nodded. That seems fair. The examiner stepped forward. What qualifies as strategic class? Pell looked at the restored adventurer walking past the doorway without a limp. That, fair again. I leaned back. So what happens if someone actually needs one? Pell's expression hardened. Then we deal with it carefully. You saved a life tonight. I am not going to criticize that. But once people understand what you can create, they will not only come asking for medicine, some will come asking for you. That sentence stayed with me. Mara had said nobles. Pell had said merchants. The administrator had said, do not destroy an economy. Maybe the problem was bigger than I had thought. I looked toward the front shop. Lysa was laughing with her companions. She should have lost her leg. Instead, she was standing. I could not regret that. I turned back to Pell. I will keep the stronger potions quiet. Good. He stood. Tomorrow morning, come to the guild. We will discuss what you can safely sell. I pointed toward the stairs. I have a room here. Pell looked at Mara. She sighed. Apparently. He nodded to me and left with the examiner. The clerk followed them reluctantly. Mara locked the back door again. Then she looked at me. You lasted 6 hours. I frowned. Before what? Before becoming a problem. I checked the small clock on the wall. 6 hours was not terrible. Mara threw a cleaning cloth at me. I caught it. The floor is still covered in blood. I looked at the treatment area. Right, comfortable unemployment had been delayed again. We cleaned the shop after the adventurers finally left. Lisa stopped beside me at the door. She touched her healed leg as if she still expected it to disappear. I owe you my life. I shook my head. You owe Mara. She gave you the potion. Mara glared at me from across the shop. Lisa smiled. Then I owe both of you. She placed a small silver hawk badge on the counter. If you ever need help, bring that to the Adventurers Guild. I picked up the badge. This felt dangerously close to acquiring responsibilities. Lisa laughed and left. Mara closed the door behind her. I carried the badge upstairs. My room was tiny. Bed, table, one window overlooking Market Square. It was still more than I had expected to have on my first night in another world. I dropped my travel bag beside the bed. The town outside was getting quiet. Lanterns glowed along the streets. I sat on the edge of the mattress and looked at my hands. Healing potion. A red bottle appeared. I dismissed it. Antidote, green bottle, dismissed. Restoration, gold bottle. I stared at that one longer. The administrator had given me exactly what I asked for. Unlimited potions. No ingredients, says. Almost any effect I could clearly define. I had expected that to mean easy money. I had not expected one bottle to be worth more than some houses. I dismissed the gold potion and lay back on the bed. Tomorrow I would go to the guild. I would learn normal prices. I would sell normal medicine. I would save money. I would open a quiet little apothecary. No heroes, no demons, no kings, no prophecies. I closed my eyes. Someone began pounding on the shop door downstairs. I opened them again. Mara shouted from below. Alex! I sat up. What? Her footsteps hit the stairs. She reached my door and held up an envelope sealed with dark blue wax. A golden crown had been stamped into the center. I stared at it. Mara stared at me. I pointed toward the seal. Please tell me that is not what I think it is. She handed me the envelope. A royal courier just delivered it. I looked toward the ceiling. Somewhere very far away, I hoped the administrator was having a terrible evening. I broke the seal. The letter contained only 3 lines. News of an extraordinary restoration performed in Bellhaven had already reached the regional governor. His household requested a private demonstration at my earliest convenience. I lowered the paper. Mara folded her arms. Quiet little apothecary? I dropped backward onto the bed. It had been 6 hours. I slept badly. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw the royal seal sitting on the table beside me. By morning, I had decided the letter was probably less dangerous if I ignored it. Mara disagreed. She dropped a plate of bread in front of me. You are going. I tore off a piece. I was considering pretending I never received it. Mara poured herself tea. The courier watched you open it. I stopped chewing. That complicates things. She slid the letter across the table. The governor's estate is only an hour outside Bellhaven. Go there, demonstrate something boring, take his money, and come back. I looked at the golden crown stamped into the wax. What qualifies as boring to a governor? Minor healing. Fever medicine. Something nobles already know exists. That sounded reasonable. Someone knocked downstairs. Mara looked toward the door. The knocking became louder. I pointed at it. Is that normal? No. We went downstairs. Master Pell stood outside with the guild examiner and 2 men wearing dark blue coats. Pell looked at the royal letter in my hand. Good, you received it. I stepped aside. Apparently everyone knows about my mail. One of the blue-coated men produced another sealed document. By order of Governor Aldrin, Alex is requested at the governor's residence this morning. I looked at Mara. She took my breakfast plate away. Apparently I was done eating. Pell entered the shop and closed the door. Before you go, we need to agree on what you are going to say. I leaned against the counter. I thought lying to governors was generally discouraged. Pell frowned. I am not asking you to lie. I am asking you not to announce that you can create unlimited strategic medicine from nothing. Fair distinction. The examiner placed several sample bottles on the counter. We will describe your gift as rare manifestation alchemy. Limited production. Strong compatibility with restorative medicine. I nodded. That sounded respectable. Mara pointed at me. And no experimenting. I looked offended. I experimented once. Pell stared at me. Yesterday you created 4 completely different potions within an hour of registering. I counted them in my head. That was more than 4. I decided not to correct him. Pell tapped the royal letter. Governor Aldrin is practical. He will want proof. Give him enough proof to satisfy him. Nothing more. I picked up one of the sample bottles. Minor healing? Yes. Antidote? If requested. Restoration? Pell and Mara answered at the same time. No. I put the bottle down. Very clear. The governor's carriage waited outside Market Square. I climbed in with Pell while the 2 blue-coated guards took the front. Bellhaven disappeared behind us. Farms replaced stone buildings. Pell spent most of the ride explaining noble etiquette. I stopped listening after the 3rd rule about titles. When the estate came into view, I understood why nobles needed so many rules. The governor's residence was larger than some neighborhoods. Stone walls surrounded gardens, stables, servants' buildings, and a central manor overlooking the river. The carriage stopped beneath a covered entrance. A servant opened the door. Pell stepped out first. I followed. The servant looked at my plain clothes, then at Pell. His expression asked a question his mouth did not. Pell ignored it. We were led through several halls into a private study. Governor Aldrin stood beside a large window. A woman in formal clothes sat nearby with one hand wrapped around a cane. Another man wearing a physician's badge waited beside her. The governor greeted Pell first. Then his attention moved to me. Alex. I nodded. Governor. Pell made a quiet noise beside me. Apparently, I had already broken a rule. Aldrin did not seem bothered. I am told you performed a restoration last night that should have required a royal healer. I glanced at Pell. He gave me nothing. I turned back to Aldrin. The injury was severe, so I treated it. The woman with the cane studied me. The governor noticed. This is my sister, Lady Renna. The physician shifted uncomfortably. I looked at the cane. Pell noticed too. His shoulders tightened. The governor gestured toward a small table. We requested a demonstration. I walked over. What would you like demonstrated? Aldrin placed a knife beside his hand. Pell immediately stepped forward. Governor. Aldrin drew the blade lightly across his own palm. Blood appeared. I stared at him. Nobles apparently had strange hobbies. He held the hand toward me. Healing potion. I summoned a small red bottle beneath the edge of my sleeve and placed it on the table. Aldrin noticed the bottle appear. His eyes sharpened. So did Renna's. I poured one drop across the cut. Warm light moved over his skin. The wound closed. Aldrin wiped away the blood. The physician took his hand and examined it. Complete closure, no visible scar. The governor looked at the remaining potion. How much could you produce in one day? I remembered Pell's instructions. Enough for my work. Aldrin smiled slightly. A careful answer. Pell finally relaxed. Renna tapped her cane against the floor. Can it heal old wounds? Everyone stopped moving. Pell looked at the governor. Aldrin looked at his sister. The physician lowered his eyes. I pointed at the cane. What happened? Renna pulled back part of her dress enough to reveal a heavily braced leg. Riding accident 6 years ago. Bone healed badly. Nerve damage remained. 3 royal healers attempted treatment. I looked at Pell. His expression clearly said no. I looked back at Renna. Does it hurt? Every day. Pell stepped beside me. Alex. I knew what he meant. Do not create strategic medicine. Do not demonstrate anything unusual. Do not make a governor interested in kidnapping you. Very sensible rules. Renna tried to stand. Her injured leg shook beneath her. She caught herself on the cane. That made the decision less sensible. I looked at the physician. Is the original injury fully closed? Yes, then this is not emergency medicine. Correct. I thought about the potion rules. Restore damaged tissue to a healthy state. Repair malformed bone. Restore damaged nerves. The ability responded immediately. Warmth gathered in my palm. Pell grabbed my wrist under the table. I looked at him. He shook his head. Renna noticed the movement. If you cannot do it, say so. I looked at her, struggling to remain standing. I pulled my wrist free. I can do it. Pell closed his eyes. A golden potion appeared in my hand. Governor Aldrin stopped smiling. The physician stepped closer. Rena stared at the liquid. That is not the same potion. No. I handed it to the physician first. He smelled it and examined the liquid against the window. I cannot identify this. You are not supposed to. He looked offended. Rena laughed. I handed her the bottle. Half. She drank. Golden light spread down her injured leg. Her hand tightened around the cane. The brace shifted. Rena gasped. Aldrin stepped forward. The physician dropped to one knee beside her. Her legs straightened inside the brace. Old scar tissue faded. Rena took a sharp breath. Then, the light disappeared. The room went quiet. The physician removed the brace. Rena stared at her leg. Move your foot. She did. Bend the knee. She bent it. The physician touched several points along her calf. Can you feel this? Yes. This? Yes. Rena slowly stood without the cane. Aldrin reached toward her. She pushed his hand away. One step, then another. She crossed the room. The cane remained beside the chair. Rena turned around. Her expression changed. 6 years of pain had disappeared in less than a minute. Pell rubbed his forehead. I had seen Mara make the same motion several times. Governor Aldrin looked at the golden bottle. How much? I frowned. For what? That potion. I had not considered a price. Pell answered before I could. Restoration class medicine is not currently offered for general sale. Aldrin ignored him. Name a number. I looked at Rena. She was still testing her leg. I looked back at the governor. I do not know what it is worth. The physician laughed once. More than this estate. That was not helpful. Aldrin studied me, then he walked to his desk and opened a drawer. A heavy leather pouch landed on the table. The sound alone told me there was more than silver inside it. 100 gold. Pell inhaled sharply. I stared at the pouch. That seems excessive. Aldrin shook his head. It is insulting. Rena walked back without her cane. Take it before my brother decides to become generous. I picked up the pouch. It was extremely heavy. My quiet life suddenly had excellent funding. Aldrin returned to his desk. Now we discuss the dangerous part. There it was. He pointed at the empty golden bottle. If word spreads that you can repair injuries royal healers cannot, every wealthy family in Varel will come looking for you. Pell nodded. We intend to restrict public knowledge. Aldrin looked at me. Can you create more? I hesitated. Pell stepped on my foot. I understood the message. Yes. Aldrin noticed Pell's movement anyway. How many? I gave him the safest answer available. Enough that I do not want anyone knowing the answer. Aldrin leaned back. Good. At least you understand the problem. I put the gold pouch into my bag. I am beginning to. Rena picked up her abandoned cane. She held it out to me. Keep this. Why? A reminder. Of what? She smiled. That you are terrible at staying unnoticed. Pell coughed into his hand. I reluctantly accepted the cane. Great. My first noble souvenir was evidence of my own bad judgment. Governor Aldrin wrote something on a sheet of paper and sealed it. This grants you permission to operate an apothecary within Bellhaven without additional regional licensing fees. I took the document. That sounded useful. It also instructs local officials to refer unusual inquiries about your work to my office. That sounded even more useful. Pell read the seal. Protection. Aldrin looked at me. Limited protection. If you begin selling restoration elixirs in the street, I will personally revoke it. I raised both hands. Normal medicine, quiet shop? Rena laughed again. Everyone keeps saying those words as though they believe you. We returned to Bellhaven before noon. Mara was waiting behind the counter. She saw the cane first, then the gold pouch. Her eyes narrowed. What did you do? I set Rena's cane against the wall. Minor demonstration. Pell walked past me. He repaired Governor Aldrin's sister's 6-year injury. Mara looked at me. Pell continued upstairs without stopping. 100 gold. Mara's eyes widened. I placed the pouch on the counter. In my defense, she looked miserable. Mara opened the pouch. Gold coins filled it. She closed it again. I am increasing your rent. I grabbed the pouch. Absolutely not. For the first time since arriving in Bellhaven, my plan accelerated in the correct direction. I spent the next 3 days looking for a shop. Mara refused to let me buy the first building I saw. The second had a leaking roof. The third was beside a tannery and smelled like something had died inside the walls. On the fourth attempt, we found a narrow 2-story building on the edge of Market Square. The previous owner had sold candles. It had shelves, a storage room, a small apartment upstairs, and windows facing the street. I stood in the empty front room. "This is it." Mara inspected the ceiling. "You have looked at the building for 30 seconds. It has a bed upstairs. That is not how property decisions work. It also has a counter, Alex, and it is 5 minutes from the food stalls." Mara stopped arguing. Apparently that was a strong point. The owner wanted 28 gold. I paid 25 after Mara negotiated while I stood silently behind her. The man handed me the key. I looked around my new apothecary. 4 days after dying, I owned property. Reincarnation was going surprisingly well. Mara pointed at the empty shelves. "Now you need inventory." I held out both hands. "That part is easy. We started with normal medicine, minor healing potion, red liquid, fever reducer, amber, common antidote, green burn treatment, blue, pain relief, purple, stomach medicine, pale yellow." Mara made me weaken several formulas before she approved them. I created another red bottle. She tested it. Still too strong. I frowned. "It heals small cuts? It heals small cuts instantly. That is the problem." I reduced the effect. She tested again. "Better." I stared at her. "We are intentionally selling worse medicine. We are selling medicine people will believe exists." Annoyingly logical. We wrote prices on wooden tags. 4 silver for minor healing, 2 for common antidotes, 1 for simple tonics. Restoration potions were not displayed. Mara made me promise to keep them out of sight. I put a single golden bottle in a locked box beneath my upstairs bed. The lock was pointless because I could create another whenever I wanted. It made Mara feel better. Opening day arrived. I unlocked the front door. 3 people were already waiting outside. I looked at Mara. "Did you tell anyone?" "No." One of the customers pointed at me. "That is him." Apparently, they Bellhaven had. By noon, there was a line across the street. Most people did not need miracle medicine. They wanted to see the alchemist who had healed Lysa. I sold headache tonic to a blacksmith. I sold burn treatment to a cook. A farmer bought 3 bottles of joint relief. An adventurer placed an old scarred hand on the counter. "Can your medicine fix this?" I inspected it. The fingers moved badly. Old tendon damage. "Yes," Mara coughed behind me. I corrected myself. "Not with anything sold publicly." The adventurer leaned closer. "How much privately?" Mara coughed louder. I pointed toward the red bottles. "Try regular healing first." He bought 2 and left disappointed. Mara stepped beside me. "Good," I smiled. "I can learn." The front door opened. 6 more customers entered. My smile disappeared. By evening, I had earned more money than my old job paid in a month. I also had sore feet. I collapsed into the chair behind the counter. "This is too much work." Mara counted the day's sales. "You made 32 silver. "Exactly. I should be able to afford less work now." She threw a cloth at me, cleaned the counter. The next morning, I hired someone. Tessa arrived with a recommendation from Mara and immediately reorganized the shelves I had organized the night before. I watched her move every red potion to a different shelf. "Why? Customers can reach those." "And? Customers are stupid." "Fair." She placed expensive medicine behind the counter. Then she wrote an inventory ledger. I looked over her shoulder. "We do not need that. Every shop needs inventory." I held out my hand and created another healing bottle. "Not this one." Tessa looked at the bottle, then at me. Mara did not explain that part. She slowly crossed inventory shortage off the ledger. Business became easier after that. I created medicine before opening. Tessa handled customers. I spent more time upstairs eating pastries and pretending to research. This was much closer to my original dream. Unfortunately, my customers kept bringing interesting problems. A hunter arrived with purple swelling from an insect sting. I created a specific antitoxin in the back room. The swelling disappeared. Tessa wrote special order in the ledger. A baker had lost his sense of taste after an illness. I created a nerve restoration tonic weak enough to seem plausible. He returned the next day carrying an entire basket of bread. A guard suffered from terrible night vision. I gave him a temporary enhancement potion. He came back after his shift and tried to buy 10 more. I limited him to 2. Mara visited every evening to make sure I had not destabilized medicine. For almost a week, I succeeded. Then the merchants arrived. 3 men entered just before closing. Their coats carried the symbol of the Bellhaven Merchant Consortium. Tessa saw it and quietly moved the cash box under the counter. The man in front introduced himself as Corvin Vale. I pointed toward the closed sign. He smiled. This will only take a moment. People who said that never meant it. Corvin placed one of my empty potion bottles on the counter. Our consortium has been reviewing your products. I looked at the bottle. Did the headache tonic work? Extremely well. Good. He ignored the joke. Your bottles, ingredients, distribution, and pricing are unusual. Tessa folded her arms. Customers seem happy. Corvin looked at her. This concerns supply. I leaned on the counter. I have enough. That is exactly our concern. One of the men behind him placed several documents down. Exclusive distribution agreement, ingredient procurement contract, merchant protection registration. Every page looked expensive. Corvin tapped the first one. Sign with us, and we handle your distribution across the region. I scanned the numbers. You take 40%, 38 after the first year. I pushed the paper back. No. His smile did not move. Perhaps you do not understand the value of our network. I pointed at the line outside the window. I am currently trying to have fewer customers. Tessa covered a laugh with her hand. Corvin's smile weakened. Medicine requires ingredients. Our consortium controls most medicinal herb imports into Bellhaven. I nodded. That sounds important for someone who needs herbs. His eyes moved to the shelves. You do not? Trade secret. Corvin picked up the empty bottle. Glass, then. We represent 2 of the town's 3 bottle suppliers. I created a new bottle in my palm and placed it beside his. Tessa looked at the ceiling. Corvin stared at both bottles. Mine was cleaner. I smiled. Also covered. The 2 men behind him exchanged looks. Corvin picked up my bottle. Interesting. He set it down carefully. Everything has a cost. Usually. His eyes returned to me. You should consider the offer. I pushed the contracts toward him. I did. No. Corvin gathered the papers. His expression remained polite. That evening, 3 shops stopped buying medicine from Mara. The next morning, a notice appeared at the guild questioning whether magically manifested bottles met trade standards. By afternoon, a tax inspector visited my shop. I looked at Tessa. She looked at me. We both looked at the inspector. Corvin moved quickly. The inspector examined every shelf. Your sales ledger? Tessa handed it over. Property registration? I handed him the governor's charter. His posture changed immediately. He read the golden seal twice. Regional authorization. Correct. He returned it carefully. Bottle origin certificates? I pointed at my hand. Divine gift. He stopped writing. Tessa leaned toward him. There is not a form for that, is there? There was not. The inspector left frustrated. That problem disappeared. The guild notice lasted until Master Pell personally demonstrated that my bottles were ordinary glass. The merchant pressure did not disappear. Prices for Mara's herbs rose the next day. Then they rose again. She stormed into my shop carrying an invoice. They doubled winter root. I looked at the number. Can winter root be replaced? Not easily. What does it do? Fever reduction and inflammation control. I summoned a pale amber bottle. Mara stared at it. No. I handed it to her. We are not destroying the economy. We are bypassing one ingredient. Alex, Corvin is trying to force you into a contract. I pointed at the invoice. He is also making your medicine more expensive. Mara looked at the bottle. Then at the invoice, she took the potion. 1 week. We will sell only enough to keep normal prices stable. That seemed reasonable. Corvin noticed anyway. 3 days later, he returned. This time, he came alone. Tessa locked the cash box before he reached the counter. Corvin smiled at her. Sensible woman. He placed no contracts down. Instead, he looked around the shop. You are causing difficulties. I shrugged. I am selling medicine. Without participating in the market that supports it, I pointed at the shelves. This looks like a market. Corvin leaned closer. If your ability can replace materials, glass, and labor, then you are not an alchemist. You are a competing supply chain. That was a much better description than I wanted. He continued. Today, it is medicine. Tomorrow, perhaps enhancement tonics replace training. Agricultural treatments replace fertilizer. Preservation liquids replace ice houses. How far does your gift reach? I stopped smiling. Corvin noticed. So you have considered it? Not until now. That seemed to bother him more. I looked at the bottles. The administrator had warned me about economies. I had treated it like a joke. Corvin was showing me the actual problem. If I solved every inconvenience with a potion, I would not simply make money. I could erase entire businesses. I looked back at him. I do not want to replace anyone. Then control your products. That sounded surprisingly reasonable coming from him. I folded my arms. And signed 40% of my income away? His smile returned. Preferably. There it was. I shook my head. No exclusive contract, no supply control. But I will limit what I sell publicly. Corvin considered that. The consortium will want guarantees. They can want them. I held out my hand. You can tell them I'm not interested in destroying their businesses. Corvin shook it. I will tell them you are difficult. More accurate. He left without threatening me. Tessa watched him cross the street. Do you trust him? Not remotely. Good. Neither do I. For several days, things became quiet again. Then Bellhaven decided quiet was unacceptable. I was eating lunch upstairs when someone screamed in Market Square. A second scream followed. I went to the window. People were running between stalls. A large armored boar crashed through a vegetable cart. Broken wood flew across the street. An adventurer chased it with a rope. The boar turned. The adventurer stopped. I put down my sandwich. Tessa shouted from downstairs, "Stay inside!" I opened the window. The boar charged the adventurer. He jumped aside. The animal smashed through a fruit stall. I sighed. My sandwich was still warm. I summoned a green potion. Speed! I drank it. The stairs disappeared beneath my feet. I reached the front door before Tessa could block it. Alex! I ran into the square. The boar turned toward a child frozen beside an overturned cart. I moved. Fast, I grabbed the child and pulled him behind a stone fountain. The boar missed us by inches. It skidded across the stones. People shouted. The adventurer threw his rope. It wrapped around one tusk. The boar jerked him off his feet. He hit the ground. I looked at the animal. Speed alone was not enough. Red bottle. Strength. I drank it. Heat rushed through my arms. The boar charged again. I stepped aside. I grabbed the rope. The force nearly pulled me across the square. I dug my heels into the stones. The rope tightened. The boar turned. I pulled. It actually moved. That surprised both of us. The boar rushed me. I dropped the rope. Too slow. I jumped onto the fountain. The tusk struck stone beneath my boot. Water exploded upward. I landed behind it. Another adventurer arrived with a spear. Do not kill it. I looked at him. Why? Guild capture contract, of course it was. The boar turned again. I summoned a purple bottle. Sleep. The adventurer saw it. Can you make that work on a ridgeback boar? We were about to find out. I threw the bottle. It shattered across the animal's face. Purple liquid splashed into its mouth and nose. The boar took 2 more steps. Then its legs folded. It slid across the square and stopped beside a destroyed cabbage stall. Silence. I stared at it. That worked surprisingly well. The adventurer stared at me. You carry ridgeback sedative? I looked at the broken bottle. Apparently. People began cheering. I immediately regretted coming outside. Tessa pushed through the crowd. She grabbed my sleeve. Inside, I pointed toward the sleeping boar. I saved the market. Inside, she dragged me back to the shop. Mara arrived 10 minutes later. Master Pell arrived 5 minutes after her. Corvin arrived before either of them finished yelling at me. I sat behind the counter while all 3 stood in front of it. Mara pointed outside. Strength potion. Speed potion. Custom monster sedative. I nodded. In my defense, nobody died. Pell held up one of the purple glass fragments. This can subdue a ridgeback boar instantly. Yes? Corvin looked fascinated. How much? Mara and Pell both turned toward him. He raised his hands. Business question. Pell put the glass fragment down. This is exactly what we discussed. I leaned back. Emergency use only. Mara folded her arms. You created it in the middle of Market Square. There was a boar in the middle of Market Square. Tessa nodded from behind them. He has a point. Mara looked betrayed. Tessa returned to the ledger. Pell sighed. No public sale of monster sedatives without guild review. Fine. No combat enhancement potions without dosage testing. Fine. Corvin raised one finger. I would like to purchase distribution rights if testing succeeds. No. He lowered his finger. Worth trying. The incident became another story people told about me. Customers started asking for strength potions. I refused. Adventurers wanted speed tonics. I refused those too. Someone offered 20 gold for a potion that would let him breathe fire. I considered it for 3 full seconds before Mara slapped the counter. I refused that one as well. My shop remained profitable with ordinary medicine. The gold from Governor Aldrin remained mostly untouched upstairs. For the first time, I started thinking I might actually manage this. Then the church arrived. A priest entered one morning carrying a silver sun symbol. Tessa saw it and quietly disappeared into the back room. I remained behind the counter. Can I help you? The priest placed a small card on the wood. Brother Kalen, Temple of the Radiant Mother. I looked at the symbol. Headache tonic? He did not smile. We have received reports concerning miraculous healing performed in Bellhaven. I picked up the card. People exaggerate. A shattered leg restored in minutes. I put the card down. Less exaggeration than I hoped. Callan looked around the shop. Divine healing leaves traces of sacred energy. Your medicine does not. That sounded useful. Then it is not divine. That is what concerns us. Less useful. He stepped closer. Healing beyond known alchemy without sacred energy has several possible explanations. I counted on my fingers. Rare magic. Secret technique. Incredible natural talent. Callan watched me. Forbidden source. I stopped counting. There it was. I leaned forward. My gift creates potions. Nothing is sacrificed. Nobody is cursed. No demons are involved. Kalen studied my face. You say gift? From whom? I thought about the administrator dropping a platform on me. Complicated. His eyes narrowed. I corrected myself. A divine being. That was technically true. Which deity? I had never asked his name. That suddenly seemed like an oversight. Regional administration. Callan stared at me. I realized how stupid that sounded. Tessa made a choking noise in the back room. Callan straightened. The temple requests that you submit one of your restoration elixirs for examination. I shook my head. Not happening. Why? Because every time someone learns what it does, another important person appears at my door. Callan looked toward the line outside. That problem seems established already. Fair. I slid his card back. Tell your temple I sell ordinary medicine. The stronger treatments are private emergency use. Callan picked up the card. The Radiant Mother teaches that healing gifts should serve those in need. I nodded toward the shelves. 4 silver, cheapest legal healing potion in the market square. His expression softened slightly. He looked at the customers waiting outside. Then he bowed his head. I will report what I observed. He left. Tessa came out of the back room. Regional administration? I rubbed my face. I panicked. She laughed for nearly a minute. That afternoon, another courier arrived. I recognized the blue coat before he entered. I pointed toward him. No. He stopped. I have not said anything yet. No royal letters. He held up an envelope. Royal letter. I closed my eyes. Tessa took it from him and signed the delivery book. The seal was different this time. Not Governor Aldrin's crown. This one showed a larger crest surrounded by silver wings. Mara arrived while I was still staring at it. She looked at the seal. Her face changed. That is the royal household. I slowly opened the envelope. The message was longer than the governor's. His Majesty's royal physicians had received verified testimony concerning an extraordinary restoration performed in Bellhaven. I kept reading. Mara watched my expression. What? I lowered the page. They want me in the capital. Tessa leaned over the counter. For what? Private consultation concerning a member of the royal family. Mara closed her eyes. I looked toward the ceiling. I had specifically said no kings. Tessa pointed at the letter. Technically, the king is asking you to come to him. I looked at her. That does not help. A second paper slipped from the envelope. I picked it up. Travel authorization, royal escort, lodging arrangements, payment upon arrival. Mara read over my shoulder. You cannot ignore this one. I folded the letter. I can try. Someone knocked on the door. 2 royal knights stood outside. Tessa looked at me. They work fast. I stared at my shelves of perfectly normal medicine. 1 week ago, I had wanted a tiny apothecary and enough money to avoid hard work. Now the merchants were watching my business. The temple was investigating my gift. The governor knew what my strongest potion could do, and the royal family had sent armed men to collect me. Mara patted my shoulder. Quiet life going well? I put my head on the counter. I was beginning to think the potions were not the problem. The royal knights gave me 1 hour to pack. I used 12 minutes. Mara used the other 48 telling me what not to do. Do not demonstrate restoration unless somebody is actually dying. I folded 2 shirts into my travel bag. Agreed. Do not explain unlimited production. Agreed. Do not invent anything while standing in front of the king. I stopped folding. That feels unnecessarily restrictive. Mara pointed at me. Especially that one. Tessa stood behind the counter with my appointment book. What should I tell customers? I looked at the growing line outside. Tell them the shop is closed for a royal emergency. Tessa wrote it down. Mara shook her head. Absolutely not. Why? Because then everyone in Bellhaven will know the royal family needs your medicine before you reach the city. Tessa crossed out the note. Family emergency? Better. I picked up my bag. Technically, somebody else's family. Mara shoved me toward the door. Go. The royal carriage waited beside the fountain. 2 knights rode ahead while another sat across from me inside. I watched Bellhaven disappear through the window. My shop vanished behind the town wall. I had owned it for less than 2 weeks. Already I was being escorted away by armed men. This was exactly what I had tried to avoid. The knight across from me noticed my expression. First time visiting the capital? First time being collected by royalty. He almost smiled. You are not under arrest? That is what people say before explaining why leaving is not optional. He looked out the window instead. The trip took most of the day. Farms became estates. Estates became villages. By sunset, the road joined a wide stone highway filled with merchant wagons and mounted soldiers. The capital appeared beyond the hills. High walls surrounded thousands of buildings. Towers rose above slate rooftops. At the center stood the royal palace. I leaned closer to the window. Bellhaven suddenly felt very small. The knight pointed toward the palace. We go directly there, of course we do. I had hoped for dinner first. Food will be provided. That improved royalty slightly. The carriage passed through 2 gates before entering the palace grounds. Servants met us beneath a stone archway. One took my bag. I immediately took it back. He looked confused. Personal preference. The truth was that my entire worldly fortune was inside. I followed the knights through bright halls covered in portraits of people who looked much more comfortable around crowns than I did. We stopped outside a pair of carved doors. A royal official approached. He looked at my plain clothes, my travel bag, and finally my guild token. Alex of Bellhaven? Just Alex works. His expression suggested that was not how palaces worked. He opened the doors. His Majesty is waiting. The room beyond was smaller than I expected. No throne, no crowd. A long table stood beside several windows. An older man waited at one end, wearing a simple dark coat with a gold crown embroidered over the chest. I recognized King Edric without needing an introduction. Governor Aldrin stood beside him. That was both reassuring and worrying. Aldrin noticed me. "You came." I pointed at the knights behind me. Very persuasive invitation. The king looked toward Aldrin. "You were right." Aldrin smiled. "Unfortunately." King Edric gestured toward the table. "Sit." I sat. Nobody corrected my etiquette. Good start. A physician entered through another door. Behind him came a young man around my age. He walked slowly. His face was pale. One hand trembled against his side. The king stood immediately. That told me who mattered. My son, Prince Kale. Kale lowered himself into a chair. I looked at Aldrin. 6-year riding injury? Aldrin shook his head. Worse. The physician placed several documents on the table. The prince has been ill for 4 months. Fever, muscle weakness, intermittent paralysis, internal bleeding. Our healers can slow the symptoms, but every treatment eventually stops working. I looked at Kale. He gave me a tired smile. Apparently, I am difficult to cure. I moved closer. Poison? The physician nodded. We believed so initially. We tested every known venom. Nothing matched. Curse? No detectable curse structure. Disease? No known infection? I looked at the king. And you heard about Bellhaven? Edric nodded. My sister wrote to me herself after you restored her leg. Of course, Renna had. I looked back at Kale. What happened before you became sick? Kale thought about it. Hunting trip near the eastern border. Dinner at a noble estate. 2 days later, I developed a fever. Anything unusual at dinner? Half the table was unusual. Noble dinners are exhausting. The king almost smiled. I pointed toward Kale's hand. May I? He held it out. His fingers were cold. Dark discoloration ran beneath 2 fingernails. I had seen something similar once already. Not the same poison, but the same basic problem. Something was damaging tissue faster than healers could repair it. I held out my hand. The physician immediately moved closer. What are you making? Nothing yet. I need information. I thought about the ability. A potion could neutralize a toxin currently present in the body if I defined the target. But I did not know the toxin. I tried something simpler. A small, clear bottle appeared. The liquid inside was almost colorless. The physician stared at it. What does that do? Diagnostic reagent? King Edric leaned forward. That exists? It does now. Aldrin closed his eyes. Mara would have done the same thing. I placed 1 drop on Kale's fingertip. The liquid turned black. Thin silver strands appeared inside it. I stared at the reaction. The physician leaned over my shoulder. What does that mean? I had no idea. I focused on the potion's intended purpose. Identify harmful foreign substances affecting the treated living tissue through visible reaction. Information settled into my mind more like instinct than words. I looked at Kale. There are 2 substances. The physician froze. 2? One damages nerves and blood vessels. The second suppresses normal magical healing. King Edric stood. Aldrin's expression hardened. Someone designed this. I nodded. That would explain why every treatment fails. Repair the damage and the second compound interferes. Treat one poison and the other keeps working. The physician grabbed one of his records. We repeatedly increased healing magic. I looked at the prince, which probably made everyone think the disease was adapting. Kale leaned back. Can you remove both? I held out my hand. Yes. The king's attention snapped toward me. The room became very quiet. I defined the antidote carefully. Neutralize both harmful foreign compounds currently affecting Kale. Break them into harmless substances. Prevent further binding. Do not interfere with his normal biology or magic. A deep green potion appeared. The physician reached for it. I gave it to him. Test it if you can. He smelled it, used 3 crystals, whispered a detection spell. Nothing reacted. His frustration grew. I cannot identify any active ingredient. That is becoming normal. Kale held out his hand. Give it to me. The king looked at the physician. The physician looked at me. I looked at Kale. Your choice. Kale took the bottle and drank. Everyone watched him. 10 seconds passed. Nothing happened. Then he grabbed the edge of the table. The king stepped forward. Kale raised his other hand. Wait! Sweat appeared across his forehead. Dark veins surfaced along his wrist. For 3 seconds, they became almost black. Then the color retreated. Kale inhaled sharply. His trembling stopped. He opened and closed his hand. The physician grabbed his wrist. Pulse is stronger. Kale stood. His knees held. He took one step. Then another. King Edric stared at him. Kale laughed. It was the first sound in the room that did not feel nervous. I leaned back. Antidote successful. The physician was already checking his eyes, his hands, his breathing. The discoloration beneath Kale's nails began fading. Aldrin turned toward me. Is he cured? Poison is gone. Damage is not. The room quieted again. Kale looked down at himself. How much damage? Enough that I would rather not guess. I summoned a red bottle. Strong healing, not restoration. The physician took it. Why not the gold one? I pointed at Kale. Because he is standing. Let us try less terrifying medicine first. Aldrin smiled. Mara had trained me well. Kale drank the red potion. Warm light moved across his body. Color returned to his face. His shoulders straightened. The physician listened to his chest. Better. Much better. Kale looked at his hands. I have not felt this normal in months. King Edric sat down slowly. Relief changed his entire face. Then it vanished. He looked at the black residue left in the diagnostic bottle. Who did this? I pointed at the potion. That tells me what happened, not who. Aldrin moved toward the window. 2-component poison designed specifically to resist magical treatment. That is not common criminal work. The physician gathered his records. We need to retest everything he ate during the hunting trip. I raised a hand. If you kept samples. The physician stopped. We did. The palace stores suspicious food and medicine used during royal incidents. That seemed excessive until I remembered I was in a palace. Edric looked at me. Can your diagnostic potion test stored material? I thought about the rule. Topical treatment on living targets had restrictions, but chemical reagents were allowed within the administrator's earlier wording. My ability had already created a diagnostic liquid. Probably. Aldrin pointed at me. You said you would not experiment in front of the king. I looked at him. Mara told you? He shook his head. Lucky guess. The physician returned carrying a locked case. Inside were small sealed containers. Wine residue, sauce, dried herbs, medicine previously administered to Kale. I created several drops of diagnostic reagent. Most samples remained clear. One turned black with silver strands. The physician stared at the label. A digestive tonic. King Edric's expression changed. Kale looked at him. I took that for 3 days after the hunt. Who supplied it? The physician swallowed. It came from the Eastern Estate. Aldrin reached for the label. House Valmir. The room became much less friendly. I looked between them. Is that bad? Edric answered. Their lands border the kingdom of Orden. Relations have been difficult for years. I leaned back. There it was. Geopolitical concerns. The administrator had warned me without actually warning me. Kale picked up the contaminated sample. Someone poisoned me and then gave me medicine designed to stop anyone curing it. Aldrin nodded, which means they expected you to survive long enough for the illness to become politically useful. I did not like where this was going. Edric turned toward the door. Guards! 2 soldiers entered. Seal the medical stores. Detain everyone connected to the Valmir shipment. Quietly. The soldiers left. I stood. Great. Prince saved. Conspiracy discovered. I should probably return to Bellhaven. Nobody moved. I sat back down. Worth trying. Edric looked at the diagnostic bottle. How many of those can you create? Aldrin coughed. The king looked at him. Aldrin pointed toward me. Careful question. Edric understood immediately. Enough, I answered. The king studied me. You understand what this means? I pointed at the poison tonic. Someone is terrible at gift baskets? Kale laughed. Edric did not. An undetectable poison capable of defeating royal healing could have killed commanders, diplomats, or members of my family. Your potion can expose it. I nodded slowly. That is useful. It is strategic. I hated that word. Aldrin folded his arms. Welcome to my week. The palace investigation moved quickly. I did not participate in most of it. That was intentional. Guards searched rooms. Officials carried sealed boxes through the hallways. The physician tested samples with diagnostic reagent I supplied in small quantities. By midnight, they had found the same poison in 3 containers. One had been intended for the king. I stopped complaining about being summoned. Someone had tried to remove 2 members of the royal family with medicine nobody could detect. That changed the situation. I was eating dinner in a guest room when Kale arrived without guards. He looked much healthier. I pointed at the chair. Should princes wander around during assassination investigations? Apparently not. He sat anyway. I pushed a plate toward him. The palace food was too good to waste. Kale took a piece of bread. My father wants to make you royal alchemist. I nearly choked. No. Kale smiled. That was also my response. I drank water. I already have a shop. He will offer you a title. No. Estate. No. Salary. Depends. Kale laughed. I pointed at him. Salary does not mean employment. It means compensation. You would still have duties. Then no. He leaned back. What do you want? I thought about it. The same things I had wanted in the White Chamber. Money, safety, very little mandatory work. I looked at Kale. I want people to stop trying to own my ability. His smile disappeared. That may be harder. Merchants wanted distribution. The guild wanted restrictions. The church wanted answers. Now the crown wanted strategic medicine. Every group had a reasonable argument. None of those arguments ended with me being left alone. I stood and walked toward the window. I will help when people are dying. I will sell ordinary medicine. I will make emergency treatments if something terrible happens. But I am not becoming a royal weapon factory. Kale nodded. Tell my father exactly that. The next morning I did. King Edric sat at the same table. Aldrin stood beside him. Pell had arrived from Bellhaven sometime during the night. When I saw him, I knew this had become official. Pell sat across from me. Enjoying the capital? I pointed at him. You knew this would happen eventually. I hoped for at least a month. Edric placed a document on the table. Royal appointment as court alchemist. I pushed it back without reading. No. Edric looked at Pell. Pell shrugged. I warned you. The king replaced it with another document. Royal supplier, no permanent residence required. I read 2 lines. Exclusive service, no. Another document. Special medical advisor, 12 mandatory visits per year. I pushed it back. That sounds like a job. Edric leaned back. What do you propose? Finally. I had spent half the night deciding. I placed a blank sheet of paper on the table. Independent apothecary charter. Aldrin raised an eyebrow. I continued. My shop remains independent. Nobody receives exclusive rights to my production. Not the crown, not the guild, not merchants, not the church. Pell nodded slowly. I pointed at the next line. Ordinary medicine can be sold normally. Anything capable of changing military power, restoring catastrophic injuries, or replacing major industries stays restricted. Edric tapped the table. Restricted by whom? Me. His expression hardened. Pell spoke before he could object. With review. I looked at him. He pointed at the paper. You need somebody who can tell you when your normal idea is terrifying. Fair. I added the Bellhaven Alchemist Guild as a reviewing party. Aldrin leaned closer. The crown also needs emergency access. I added another line. Genuine emergencies involving mass casualties, rare poison, epidemic disease, or threats to the kingdom can request assistance. Request, not command. Edric frowned. If an army is dying... I interrupted him. I will help. If you want 10,000 strength potions because invading somewhere would be easier, I will not. Silence. Kale stood near the window trying not to smile. Edric looked at Pell. Is he always like this? Pell nodded. This is the improved version. The king returned to the document. Protection? I tapped the bottom. My favorite part. The Crown recognizes the shop as protected independent medical property. No forced acquisition, no compulsory production, no seizure of formulas, equipment, or employees. Aldrin pointed toward the word equipment. He does not have equipment, Pell whispered back. Do not encourage him, I continued. Attempts to abduct me, force production, or seize restricted medicine are treated as offenses against the Crown. Edric read that twice. You want royal protection without becoming a royal servant. Exactly. He almost looked impressed. What does the Crown receive in return? Emergency medical priority. Controlled access to restoration medicine when genuinely needed. Diagnostic support for rare poisons. And I will not sell strategic potions to foreign governments. That last line changed the room. Edric looked at Aldrin. Aldrin nodded. Pell leaned back. Sensible. Edric picked up a pen. One addition. I waited. Strategic medicine cannot be exported without Crown and Guild approval. I considered it. Fine. He signed. Aldrin signed as witness. Pell signed for the Guild. I added my name last. The king pressed a seal into the paper. My quiet little apothecary had somehow acquired international trade restrictions. Progress. The meeting ended just before a guard burst through the door. He had blood on his sleeve. East Service Corridor. Intruder. Everyone moved. Aldrin pulled Kale away from the windows. Pell stood. King Edric reached for a bell. Another shout came from the hallway. Then glass shattered. A small metal object bounced through the doorway. I looked at it. A thin needle protruded from one end. The physician from yesterday ran toward us. Do not touch that. Smoke began leaking from the object, pale gray. I stopped breathing. Poison? The physician nodded. Guards slammed the doors. Wrong move. Smoke spread across the floor. Kale covered his mouth. Edric backed away. Pell grabbed a curtain. I held out my hand. Antidote first. 5 clear bottles appeared across the table. I shoved one toward each person. Drink. Nobody argued. We swallowed. Coolness spread through my chest. The physician watched the smoke. What did you target? Airborne toxic compounds currently entering the body. Pell drank faster. Good answer. Someone hit the door from outside. A guard shouted. Another voice answered. Metal struck metal. The action moved quickly. Kale pulled the king behind the table. Pell kicked the smoking device toward the fireplace. I drank a speed potion. The room sharpened. The door opened. A masked man pushed through before the guards could stop him. He held a small crossbow. He aimed at Edric. I moved. The bolt fired. I grabbed the king's chair and yanked it sideways. The bolt struck wood. The masked man reached for another. Kale threw a silver tray. It hit his arm. The crossbow fell. A guard tackled him into the wall. Another intruder appeared behind the first. He raised a blade. Pell threw the nearest bottle. It shattered against the man's face. Purple liquid covered him. I stared at Pell. Sleep potion? He shrugged. You left samples in my carriage. The intruder took one step, then collapsed. I pointed at Pell. We are discussing that later. More guards filled the hall. The fight ended almost immediately. The first attacker struggled beneath 3 soldiers. The second was unconscious. Smoke still drifted across the floor. The physician coughed once, then twice. His face changed. The antidote? I looked at him. Not enough? Different compound? Of course it was. I grabbed his wrist. His pulse raced. A red line climbed his neck. I summoned another diagnostic drop and touched it to his skin. Blue crystals formed in the liquid. Different poison. Designed for skin contact. I created a second antidote. He drank. The red line stopped. Pell stared at the attackers. 2 delivery methods, 2 poisons. I looked at the king. Same people? Edric's face was cold. We will find out. The captured attacker bit down hard. A guard grabbed his jaw too late. Foam appeared at his mouth. Poison capsule. I moved. Restoration would not help if his soul left. Antidote. I created it before anyone asked. The guard forced the liquid into his mouth. The attacker convulsed, then breathed. Edric watched him survive his own suicide attempt. I looked at the king. You wanted one alive. His expression changed slightly. Yes. Very much. The interrogation took hours. I was thankfully not invited. By afternoon, the palace knew enough. The attackers had been hired through agents connected to the same Eastern network that supplied Kale's poisoned medicine. Several arrests followed. House Valmir's head fled toward the border and was captured before sunset. Ordon denied involvement. Nobody believed them. Nobody could prove enough to start a war. That seemed like the best possible outcome. The poisoning plot ended as a criminal conspiracy instead of an excuse for armies to march. My diagnostic potions became restricted immediately under the agreement I had signed that morning. Pell seemed far too pleased about that. 3 days later, I finally returned to Bellhaven. The carriage stopped in Market Square. I stepped out with my travel bag, Rena's cane, a royal charter, and more attention than any person seeking anonymity should possess. Tessa stood outside my shop. Mara stood beside her. Corvin waited across the street. Brother Kalen stood near the fountain. A crowd filled the square. I stopped beside the carriage. Why are there so many people? Tessa pointed at the shop sign. Someone had added a second board beneath it. Royally protected apothecary. I stared at Mara. She raised both hands. Not me. Corvin approached first. He looked at the royal seal on the charter. Congratulations. I narrowed my eyes. You sound disappointed. Slightly. Exclusive distribution is now impossible. Good. He handed me a new contract. Non-exclusive regional distribution. 15%. I looked at him. You learn quickly. So do you. I tucked the contract under my arm. I will read it. Corvin smiled and walked away. Brother Kalen approached next. The temple completed its review. I braced myself. And no evidence of forbidden magic. I relaxed. He continued. We have classified your ability as an unrecognized divine blessing. I stared at him. From which deity? Kalen looked uncomfortable, undetermined. I smiled. Regional administration. He did not find that funny. Mara pushed through them and grabbed my sleeve. Inside before anyone else adopts you. That sounded wise. I entered the shop. The shelves were stocked. Tessa had reorganized them again. A new locked cabinet stood behind the counter. I pointed at it. What is that? Restricted orders? Mara handed me a stack of papers. Guild-approved requests only. I flipped through them. Severe burn. Rare venom. Failed healing magic. Nothing ridiculous. I looked at Mara. This might actually work. She nodded. That was the idea. Tessa opened another ledger. Ordinary customers here. Special requests here. Emergency cases require 2 signatures. I pointed at her. You built paperwork around my potions? Someone had to. I hated how useful it was. The next month became the closest thing to quiet I had experienced since dying. I opened the shop late. Tessa complained. I hired a second clerk. Tessa complained less. I sold ordinary medicine in the morning. I ate lunch upstairs. I handled unusual cases in the afternoon. Restoration potions remained rare. The guild reviewed them. The crown received reports. Nobody got exclusive access. People still traveled to Bellhaven hoping for miracles, but most left with normal medicine and instructions to stop doing whatever stupid thing had injured them. My money increased faster than I could spend it. I bought better furniture, then a better bed, then a ridiculous chair for the upstairs window because I could. Mara entered one morning and found me sitting in it while eating expensive pastries. She looked around the apartment. Comfortable enough? I considered the question. Warm bed, good food, shop downstairs, employees doing most of the work. I nodded, getting there. She handed me a letter. I immediately stopped smiling. Royal seal? No. Guild seal? No. Church? No. Merchant consortium? No. I took it carefully. Then who? Mara smiled. Lysa. I opened the letter. The Silverhawks were returning from a long expedition. They had found something in old ruins that apparently needed an alchemist. I lowered the page. Absolutely not. Mara headed downstairs. I followed her. I am serious. No ruins, no monsters, no ancient curses. Tessa looked up from the counter. What about the customer waiting in the back room? I stopped. What customer? She pointed through the curtain. A farmer says his cow turned blue after drinking from a glowing pond. I stared at her. Mara covered a laugh. I looked toward the ceiling. This was not the quiet life I had imagined. It was probably better. I walked into the back room. A worried farmer stood beside a bucket containing bright blue milk. I stared at it. He stared at me. Can you fix her? I set down Lysa's letter and held out my hand. A clear bottle appeared. Let us start by figuring out why your cow is blue. The farmer relaxed immediately. Downstairs, the bell above the shop door rang again. More customers entered. Tessa greeted them. Mara started sorting bottles. Sunlight filled the front windows. My shop was busy, protected, profitable, and very far from anonymous. I had failed completely at becoming insignificant. I smiled anyway and uncorked the diagnostic potion. Apparently, surviving another world quietly had been the unrealistic part of my plan. The infinite potions were easy,